Anyone who is a fan of the Souls series knows that the game poses more questions than answers. The same is true of the information we have just received regarding Dark Souls 2. The game's new directors, Tomohiro Shibuya and Yui Tanimura, answered questions in Edge magazine, but ultimately we are left with clues. Let's try to see what kind of game these clues point towards and answer the question, should we be worried? Edge magazine was shown a 10-minute playthrough of Dark Souls 2 and said it was a huge step forward graphically from its predecessors. It looks on par with Watch Dogs and Star Wars 1313 and can easily be considered a next-gen game. This is great news for PC gamers who will not be held back by outdated systems. The graphics are said to be shockingly close to the trailer's quality. From Software and Namco Bandai are really pulling out all the stops for this game. According to Shibuya, the team working on Dark Souls 2 is substantially bigger. He points out that the studio has nearly doubled the internal team focused on world creation alone, in addition to adding new members across every department. The game is estimated at 25% finished, which means we can pretty much rule out the game arriving in 2013. One of the biggest gripes Miyazaki had with Dark Souls was that it required patches and shipped incomplete, and no one is keen to make that mistake again. When we get the game, it will be perfect in the eyes of the developer. Speaking of developers, many of you are aware that the lead developers for Dark Souls 2 have changed. The Souls series was the genius of Hidetaka Miyazaki, who had an interest in Western fantasy and mythology. He built a dark world that could be never completely understood, a concept which stemmed from his relative inability to read English text as a child. He had to fill in the blanks with his imagination, and so do we. But Miyazaki is no longer director. He will supervise the game, but from the article we can tell that he is truly stepping aside, and I quote, "in order to steer Dark Souls in a fresh direction." Miyazaki is working on a new title as a director, but we have no information on what this is as of yet. Namco Bandai's recent attempts to develop memorable new properties have been largely unsuccessful. From their viewpoint, it makes sense to give Miyazaki a chance to replicate his genius while handing the Souls series to a pair of directors who aim to make the game even more popular. This is where I start getting anxious. The new directors Tomohiro Shibuya and Yui Tanimura have worked on titles such as Monster Hunter and Armored Core. They have a number of good games under their belt and were approved by Miyazaki himself. Shibuya mentions that he wants to enhance the action in the game, and if the combat in Monster Hunter is anything to go by, I wouldn't mind his enhancements. I don't believe we will be seeing major overhaul to the combat or the core gameplay, and you must bear in mind that a different director doesn't mean a different game. It will still feel like a Souls game because of the team that works on it, but some key aspects of the game have been pulled into question, and the directors have made some debatable statements. This is where we get our cause for concern. From reading the article, I believe the controls of the game won't change, but we will notice a change in direction that will appeal to a wider audience. The directors say the experience won't change, and we just have to hope that the extra accessibility will not infringe on the experience. Shibuya says he wants the game to be more accessible. This is a scary word for Souls fans, because accessible might be synonymous with easy, and easy is synonymous with casual games. However, even I agree that the Souls games could explain some mechanics a bit better. World Tendency in Demon Souls was borderline impossible to figure out without a wiki, and summoning, humanity, weapon requirements, and covenants were confusing in Dark Souls, even though they were core components of the game. If a new player runs through Dark Souls with no knowledge of these things, then they will miss out on half the game through no fault of their own. The same goes for the lore, which I learned through the community rather than the games themselves. I love the fact that these things are hidden and encourage community, but at the same time I can appreciate why Namco wants to make the game more understandable. I think that everyone can rest assured that Shibuya feels the same way, as he promises that there will still be hidden elements in the story and the world which can be missed. In the article, Shibuya talks about limiting player options for the very first portion of the game, making it simpler to understand the core gameplay concepts of this new Dark Souls. After a certain period of time has elapsed, players will immediately feel the Dark Souls experience. And as long as that Dark Souls experience is there, I'm satisfied. Shibuya seems to want to reinforce and reward understanding. In the Souls series we see intuition rewarded. A bridge with bloodstains and burn marks on it means you must progress cautiously, and realizing that there are ghosts ahead means that you probably can't hit them with your current equipment. At the same time, there are hidden walls and covenant effects that couldn't possibly be understood without the help of a wiki. In the article, Shibuya says he wants to make us think further into what each situation actually means. When he says he wants to make the game more accessible, I think this is what Shibuya is referring to. He wants less ambiguity, more experiences, and more rewards for understanding. He even mentions implementing a system that will let you reveal the clues you've learned over the course of the game. I love the hidden parts of Dark Souls, and I hope the changes in Dark Souls 2 invalidate the need to search the wiki. There's nothing wrong with more clues and higher rewards for those who find them. This game promises drastic change, and that's something to be excited and anxious about. The excessive focus on accessibility is cause for concern, but until we see gameplay, it comes down to faith in the developers. Remember that everyone working on Dark Souls knows what Dark Souls represents just as well as we do. I'm keen to see what an unprecedented budget and new ambition can do for the game, and I foresee the game becoming accessible because it is addictive and enticing rather than dumbed down and easy. In closing, I'd like to formally thank Miyazaki for all he's done. There's a good chance he won't be associated with the Souls games for a while, and I speak for all viewers when I say thank you. Thank you for creating a series that was innovative, risky, and strayed away from the casualized path most modern games follow. Thank you for making games that inspired creativity and community in myself and others. Here's to the future of the Souls games, and the future of the director that made them. Here's to hoping that the fire won't fade after the Firekeeper is gone.